I'm Jenny Crusoe, founder and current COO of Altasea. Actually, many years ago, 11 years ago, I created these open houses, but I think Anne might remember that they were very different then. We were standing with people surrounding us. I don't even think we owned chairs at the time. So all of you have made it possible that Altasea has come so far and now operates 240,000 square feet of research, development, and education space. So thank you all for being here. So before we start this really amazing program that is about marine life and marinas and ocean, because we need to care about the ocean to save this planet, because the ocean is the answer. So I am going to ask Dominique of the Yacht Society to come up and do a land acknowledgement. Dominique? Thank you.
No problem. Mirchen Achma. My name is Dominic Robles. I'm a member of the Tongva Gabrielino tribe and also a member of the Yacht Society. I'm here today to acknowledge the land and to basically come through with a couple of points that make me really excited about being at Altasea. One of them is its location. Between here, it's a launching pad. This is where the Yacht, our traditional plate canoe, would leave and go between our villages here, up in San Pedro, to Pimu, which is Catalina Island. So it's traveling between here and there. And that kind of gets me to the point of being conveyance vehicles. The Yacht would kind of bring people and in turn concepts to the tribes between here and there. That's very special because this whole facility of Altasea is kind of the same concept. And I'd say that because we have Alvin and deep sea rovers and a Stone Age vehicle kind of meeting together in the middle. And that conveyance of concepts is one of those things that's it's the heart of this. You're bringing people who would never kind of talk together. I wouldn't be next to those people naturally in my indigenous form. It's a juxtaposition. And this whole facilities is a conveyance of information, of ideas. It's a journey. And that's what she took. She took journeys. She went from the port here to the port there, bringing information, bringing techniques, bringing materials. This place does the same thing. It brings people together for information, for techniques, materials, to make sure that we as a people can take this journey together. And in this land, this is a special part of where we can make a dock, make a launching point. And as a member of the Tongva and a member of the Yacht Society, I'm very excited to take this journey with Altasea. So thank you very much for sharing this journey with us. Thank you.
All right. Well, before I go into the program, I just wanted to say that if you see Altasea people are wearing Altasea t-shirts or actually a tag saying who they are, because we have three amazing speakers today, I won't go into what Altasea is. I actually recognize almost everyone here, and I think you all know what the Altasea journey is and the collaboration. But please come and talk to us, and I'm happy to tell you more after our speakers, who we really want to put a spotlight on. Just in a nutshell, Altasea is redeveloping this 35-acre property into the largest blue economy innovation hub in the world. And alongside with our partners like Braid Theory and Kelp Arc, we're expanding that Blue Highway global initiative to other ports around the world, beginning with the ocean communities in Tonga, Aqaba in Jordan, Zanzibar in Tanzania, and Bali in Indonesia. And so if you have questions or want to be part of our collaboration, that's our strength, is we collaborate. We have over 150 partners. We're researching, developing, and scaling up ocean technologies that will meet the climate challenge, food and water security and clean energy at the focus of it. So I'm grateful that Arc Boats is here, and you got to go look at that fabulous boat. But at the same time, we're building the workforce. So as these technologies can be scaled, we'll have the workforce ready so we can implement at scale and meet the climate challenge. So that in a nutshell is Altasea. And with that, I'm going to turn to the program. But please, if you have questions, we are happy to talk about the journey and happy to find ways for you to volunteer or be connected to what Altasea does. So moving forward, this is a really great doubleheader with having the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium and then starting with Suntex as a kind of joining the marine life, the love of marine life, and the marinas together. Both are about the relationship with the ocean and about stewardship, which is critical, because if we can't have people understand the ocean, how can we have them love it and then protect it and understand that it is our solution? So we are honored to welcome, and I'm having trouble reading around this, but Hampus Idsater from Suntex Marina. He is the Director of Investment at Suntex Marinas and the largest owner and operator of recreational marinas in the United States, where he oversees marina investments in California, including a portfolio of 15 plus properties. He works closely with local operations teams and community stakeholders. In 2025, he was appointed by Governor Gavin Newsom, to the California Boating and Waterways Commissions. So please help me welcome him to the podium.
Well, thank you, Jenny, for that very generous introduction. I don't encourage you to get as many jobs as I've ended up working, but I grew up very far away from here. So I'd like to say I'm a Californian and an Angelino by marriage. What don't we do for love? My wife is a third generation Angelino and Californian, but I was born on the Baltic Sea in Sweden, and I had some pretty serious maritime role models in my life. I remember my great-grandfather, Nils. He had an anchor tattooed on his forearm, and he liked to tell me that he had sailed the 7 seas, as they like to say back in those days. And he spent most of his career in the Coast Guard. And I then had a more immediate role model, my uncle, who my mother's brother, who was a commander in the Swedish Navy. And I still to this day blame him for the fact that I'm here today. He's the one who indoctrinated me into loving boating, loving everything to do with the sea. I ended up becoming a Sea Scout. Do we have any Sea Scouts here? We got a few back there. Nice to meet you. So, I have been very fortunate to be able to make a career out of my passion. And what I'm here to talk to you about today is the future of recreational boating in California and how I believe that ties into a lot of the great work that you are doing here at Altasea. Just a little bit about myself. I know Jenny covered it pretty well. I serve on the California Boating and Waterways Commission, to which I was appointed by the governor last year. I ended up getting confirmed by the California State Senate back in January, which I was very happy about. So I am serving a term until next year, and then hopefully I'll be reappointed again for a 4-year term on the Boating and Waterways Commission. And I'll tell you more about the commission and the work that we're doing as part of my presentation here today. I also serve on the board of the Marine Recreation Association, which some of you may know is an association that represents the owners and operators of marinas across California and really across the United States as a whole. I'm also on the Marina del Rey Lessees Association, and in my day job, I work for a company called Suntex Marinas, which I'll tell you a little bit more about as well. I was educated at the University of Oxford. I got my degree in economics. I also have a California real estate license. So I come from a finance background, but I've been able to leverage that background and apply it to my passion, which is the maritime world. As I mentioned, my wife is a third-generation Californian, and we now also have a 10-month-old daughter. And I'm spending time. Actually, my wife blames all of you because I'm missing out on baby swim with my daughter. It's usually at this time every Saturday morning. And the logic, of course, being she needs to learn how to swim before you get to teach her how to sail. So let me tell you just very briefly about the California Boating and Waterways Commission. The Boating and Waterways Commission is mandated by state law to oversee the Division of Boating and Waterways, which is the part of California state parks that deals with anything on the water, right? So our mission is to ensure public access to California's waterways, as well as ensuring that boating in California is safe and environmentally sound. Most of the work that we get involved in is whenever the Division of Boating and Waterways has a project to fund additional access to waterways. It can be, for example, a new boat launch ramp on a lake in the Central Valley or in a harbor somewhere along the coast. Then they will present that to our commission. We will go out and visit the project. We will evaluate it, to make sure that it makes sense for California taxpayers, which is all of us, to ultimately play a part in funding the project. And for me, as somebody with a finance background and somebody who's passionate about public access to our waterways and boating, I find that work really fulfilling. And then I want to also tell you about Suntex Marinas and the work that I do for them in what I'd now like to call my day job with all of these other endeavors that I've got. Suntex is the largest specialized owner and operator of recreational marinas in the United States. And not to give myself too much credit, but when I joined Suntex about 4 years ago now, their geographic footprint did not look anything like this. They were very strong on the East Coast, in Florida, as well as in Texas, where there are a lot of good lake marinas. And since I joined the company back in 2022, we've added, as you can tell, a large number of marinas here in California. So we've gone from having 3 lake marinas to a total of 24 marinas, most of which are coastal marinas. So you can tell I've been busy, even in my day job, over these past 4 years, and it's been a lot of fun. Just to show you some examples of the marinas that we own and operate, we've got the Marina del Rey Marina around the Marina del Rey Hotel. We have Peter's Landing Marina in Huntington Beach. For those of you who know that part of Southern California, it's also known as Sunset Beach, right, or Surf City, right, Huntington Beach. So we get a very different crowd there from what we have in Marina del Rey, and it's fascinating just to get to see the different boating communities we have, even within the Los Angeles metropolitan area, right? There are so many different facets to the work that we do. Now, a question I get a lot is, who do you actually serve, right? Who does Suntex serve? And there can be a lot of misunderstandings about this. For example, I'll give you one good example. I had somebody at State Parks when I joined the commission who said, "Oh, Hampus, as I understand it, you represent these mega yacht owners, the Russian oligarchs and the like." And I had to correct him and say, well, there are some large yachts at some of our marinas, but that is a very small segment. If I go back to the map here, that's a very small segment of boating in the United States. And it's usually concentrated in places like Florida, San Diego, Seattle, where we don't have a presence yet. Our bread and butter is really your local recreational boaters, right? It can be people who love fishing, people like me who have a lifelong passion for sailing. You've got your boat renters. We have a rental business we call Suntex Circle of Boating, where we try to incorporate the entire journey to becoming a boater, right? Which usually doesn't start with just buying a boat and getting out there. I think increasingly what we see is people may get into boating if they don't have a family member like mine because of a friend of theirs, right, who likes boating. And then if they like that experience, they may end up renting a boat. And nowadays you also have all of these boat sharing apps. I don't know if some of you have tried Idsater, for example, where you can rent a boat for the day, captained or without a captain. And then if you really like that experience, maybe you end up joining a boat club. So we also have the Suntex Circle of Boating Boat Club, where you can become a member. You pay sort of like a monthly subscription fee. It's like any other club. I'm a member of the local YMCA where I live. It'd be similar to that. You pay a membership fee, and then you get access to a fleet of boats. So you can try different types of boating, which we think is a big part of the future of boating, which I'll talk more about. But you can see here that we really serve the full set of boaters that are out there in California, right? It can be anyone from a seasonal boater to a transient boater coming through, right? Somebody who's likes to come down here to California because we have nice weather year-round, but they live up in state of Washington, which is a beautiful boating environment if you haven't been up there, the Puget Sound, right? So we'll serve them when they're here. We'll serve the renters, the boat club members, and we'll serve sailors. And yes, God forbid, we will serve some of the large luxury yacht owners as well. Right? But I wanted to share that with you just so you get a good sense of who the customers are, which is ultimately what Suntex is all about. Suntex participates in the Clean Marina program, which we've been very closely involved in developing. This is a program by the Association of Marina Industries, which is one of the two large marina industries nationwide. The whole purpose of it is to create sustainable and environmentally friendly boating facilities across the nation. What does it mean in practice? Well, it means you train and certify your teams at each marina to be knowledgeable about things like pollution prevention, waste management, best practices when it comes to dealing with boaters and the environmental risks that they pose. And we ensure company-wide adoption and keep a really, really close focus on this, really across the nation, not just here in California, but nationwide. So here's what I'm really here to talk to you about today. I want to give you an update on recreational boating in California. As a state, we have a total of 4 million boaters, which is about 10% of the California population. And one of the things that has surprised me as an immigrant to this great state is how the majority of Californians really do not have much of a relationship to boating. That's very different from where I grew up, where I felt like not everyone, but probably the majority of people have some kind of relationship to the sea and to boating. Now, there are a lot more people here in California, right? So perhaps it's not surprising that the number, percentage-wise, is a lot lower than in a sparsely populated country like mine with a very long coastline. But let's face it, California has 3,400 miles of shoreline, right? There's no lack of shoreline. We have countless lakes, even parts of the state which you may not associate with boating, like the Central Valley. They have 10,000 boat slips, right? And I'll get to that in just a moment. But we have 700,000 registered boats. So as you can tell, there are a lot of people like myself who have a California boater card. And if you don't have yours, I encourage you to get it. It's a really good course. It doesn't even take you a day. You know, you can probably spend an afternoon to prepare for the test, take the test. It is administered by the California Division of Boating and Waterways, of which my commission is effectively the board of directors. So I really encourage you to get it. And as you can tell, most of the boaters, like myself, we don't actually own a boat. Now, I'm fortunate because of the job I do, that I have, as one of my long-term colleagues put it, you have the best of both worlds, Hampus. You have OPB. I said, what is that? He goes, you ever heard of other people's money, OPM? I said, of course, I'm from a finance background. That's what a mortgage is, right? OPM. He said, well, you've got the OPB, other people's boat. It doesn't get better than that. Because the happiest day of the boat owner, you know this, the day he buys the boat and the day he sells the boat. Those are the two happiest days of the boat owner, which is why we believe that there's more to boating than just owning a boat, right? It should be about the experience of the boater, regardless of who owns the boat. So what I did when I joined the Boating and Waterways Commission is that I teamed up with one of my fellow commissioners who comes from a completely different background than mine. She is the Sea Scout leader in San Francisco, and she's a very passionate Sea Scout leader. She used to work at the United Nations, she's been around the world, and she's seen a lot of aspects of boating that I have not necessarily seen. Now, granted, I was a Sea Scout, which may be why she decided I'm okay teaming up with this new guy on the commission. I don't know, you'd have to ask her. But other than that, the Sea Scout connection, I think we come from completely different backgrounds. And we put together what we call the Subcommittee on Boat Slips to evaluate the boating infrastructure in California, all of the moorings, boat slips, and amenities across our great state. And part of the reason why we did this was we wanted to figure out why is it that only 10% of our population seems to have a relationship to boating? And more importantly, how can we, over time, make sure that more Californians are able to experience the sea and boating, which is a wonderful thing. Here are the key findings from our initial report that we presented back in November of last year at one of our meetings. There are a total of 80,000 boat slips across the state of California. So what does that tell you? When there's 700,000 boats and 80,000 boat slips, it tells you that most boats are not stored at a marina. Most boats are stored on trailers, right? On people's driveways, in their backyards. That's the nature of boating. And any boat up to 30 feet can be stored on a trailer. They are distributed across the state, 35,000 right here in Southern California, which I define as between Santa Barbara and San Diego. LA, of course, is a very big part of it. San Francisco Bay has another 25,000 boat slips, and the Central Valley, to my point, has 10,000 boat slips, which a lot of people are surprised to learn because they don't think of the Central Valley as a place where people go boating. Well, there are a lot of lakes up there. And Suntex actually owns a number of marinas on those lakes. What is fascinating, though, is we found that the boat slips that end up being vacant, where there are no boats in them, that are a waste, to put it bluntly right now, it's not what you think. They're not the larger boat slips. They're actually the boat slips that are smaller than 25 feet. And as we started analyzing this and collecting the data and learning more about it, we realized that another fascinating data point is that, or a fascinating fact, is that virtually all of the coastal recreational harbors in California were built between 1963 and 1971. And they haven't changed a lot since then. So there's been fixed supply since the 1960s, and more shockingly, the distribution of boat slips has not really evolved. But if you look at boat manufacturing has changed beyond recognition since the 1960s, right? They build very different boats now from what they built back then. Of course, real incomes in coastal California have increased, whether it's fivefold or tenfold, you can debate, but they have increased a lot. So perhaps it's no surprise that we're seeing a lot of vacancies at our marinas for the smaller slips, especially considering that these boats can be stored on trailers, right? You don't necessarily need to have them at the marina. And we decided we're going to formulate some hypotheses to continue this work, because ultimately what we want to do is address the issues that we see and give more Californians access to boating. So one of our key hypotheses here is that public policymakers in California, and I'll remind you, all of these coastal marinas, I say Suntex owns the marinas. Well, we don't really own them. We are a master lessee of the coastal marinas usually. The submerged land is almost always owned by a local government agency in California. So politics plays a very heavy part in providing the boating infrastructure in our state, which is different from some other states like Florida, for example, where private developers built a lot of the marinas. Here, what you have are long-term ground leases for the coastal marinas. And what we found was, the policymakers, again, this is an hypothesis, I'm not saying it's true, but it's something we're testing right now because we believe it to be true, that policymakers have been very focused on preserving the smaller slips, preserving the same slip mixes as in the 1960s, because they believe that the key to getting more Californians into boating is making sure that there are a lot of small slips. Because in their minds, what a new boater will do is he'll go buy a boat, but not a big boat. It will be a boat between 18 and 25 feet. And then, of course, you need a slip to store the boat. Now, you already know what I'm going to say next. The first problem with that is, no, you don't necessarily need a slip for a boat that size. But more importantly, I am not convinced that it's true that a new boater goes and buys a boat, and that preserving small slips at marinas is the way you get more Californians into boating. So what we are saying is, let's look at that and see if it's true that policymakers have been too focused on preserving the smaller slips. But at the same time, let's figure out what are the real pathways to boating in California. And again, just hypothesizing here, we think those might be things like the public launch ramps that our commission is helping fund, right? Where if you keep a boat on a trailer, you can go and launch it very inexpensively or even free of charge, right? Here is one such launch ramp. We think that is a key to getting people into boating. We believe that affordable entry points like kayaking and stand-up paddleboarding are ways that you can get people curious about the water. And then if they like that experience, maybe they'll decide to rent a boat, which is why we need boat rentals at many more marinas in California. And then boat clubs, as I mentioned, if you end up really enjoying the experience of renting a boat, well then maybe you want to feel like you're part of a club and you have a whole fleet of boats to choose from. And technology. We don't think technology, even though this is California, right? It's the home of technology and AI. We don't think that the policymakers have connected enough with the great technologies that are out there. You know, I mentioned boat sharing apps earlier. I mean, it's really amazing. If you wanted to be a luxury yacht owner for a day, you could go on there. You can get a captain, you know, gather your friends, have a birthday party on a yacht in Marina del Rey. That's not my thing. I like sailing, you know, but maybe I'll get that beautiful sailing catamaran and throw my party on there. But it's a new world now, is the point I'm making, right? We're in 2026, not 1966. And unfortunately, a lot of the regulations and attitudes of certain policymakers do not seem to have been updated that much since the 1960s, when the marinas were built. Now, the other aspect of this that I want to talk about, because I think it also relates to the work you do here at Altasea, maybe more so than anything else, is there is this whole body of research now around marinas having the potential to act as marine protected areas. And I think most of you probably know what a marine protected area is, right? But it's an area where you protect wildlife, you allow for the species to continue to multiply and to sometimes even replenish some of the species where there's been overfishing. Now, what's interesting here, and you know, I mentioned I spent some time in the academic world, and hopefully I won't be geeking out too much here, but I find this really interesting. As many of you know, there's a big problem we need to solve, right? With climate change and the role of our oceans in combating climate change. And the United Nations has set this target called 30 by 30, which says that by 2030, we want to protect 30% of the world's oceans. And one of the key approaches to solving this problem has been to create more marine protected areas. And that's happened all over the world. We're seeing more and more of these marine protected areas. But when you look at how much protection those marine protected areas offer, the record is mixed. There are some estimates that say that fewer than 3% of the MPAs worldwide are considered highly or fully protected, which sounds like a pretty disappointing statistic to me. So we've started thinking about, could marinas actually, even though it may sound counterintuitive to some people, could marinas actually play a role and even constitute marine protected areas? One of the things I tell you that I notice a lot, especially at lake marinas, where they have certain species of fish, is that you get fish underneath the docks. And they just like being underneath. You know, I give you one example. I was down on Westlake, if any of you know Westlake, on the border with Ventura County. And there were these young guys who are fishing. And there's beautiful sea bass in that lake. And I told them, why don't you throw it really close to the docks right there? I bet you'll catch sea bass. And they came back to me later. They said, well, thank you for that piece of advice. That's the best advice we'd been given. And of course, it's because the fish congregate there underneath the docks. And it's fascinating that a university actually spent a lot of time looking at this. The University of Algarve in southern Portugal, admittedly a long way away from California, but also in a Mediterranean climate, right, with a powerful ocean and a lot of good marinas, I should add. They looked at this and concluded that marinas can play an important role in marine conservation under the right conditions. They can serve as refuges for fish and other aquatic species. And the reason for that is, it's not, you may think, oh, the fish feel protected underneath the docks, but it's also that the fish food, as I'll term it, is right there, right? You get a lot of colonies of algae, mussels, and barnacles that are attached to marina walls and to the docks themselves. So there's actually a lot for the fish to eat. So you'll see species like sea bream, sea bass in particular, and certain other species that have been overfished actually begin to multiply and thrive at marinas. And to take this a step further and touch upon how entrepreneurship and the private sector can play a part in it, I wanted to share with you this idea of creating artificial nurseries. So there's a French company, just to give you one example, I'm sure there are other examples out there. There's one called EcoOcean, which has created these biohuts, as they call them, that are essentially artificial structures where they have an interior mesh with oyster shells, where the fish food, back to my definition earlier, can build up. And then they have an outer mesh which will protect the fish against predators. So you think of it as the fish coming in through this outer mesh, through the layer of protection, and then benefiting from the fish food that is in there. Again, I'm trying to distill this into simple terms so that I can understand it myself. But it's a very interesting model because you can take these biohuts, the artificial nurseries, and attach them to the docks, right, or to the marina walls, and create what is naturally occurring in an artificial way to make it even more powerful. So that's what I wanted to leave you with, because I feel like I'm busy enough with my jobs on the commission and for Suntex, but I'd like for all of the great entrepreneurs you have here to take a closer look at this and help me figure out, as one of my many missions, whether or not marinas can truly serve as marine protected areas. That is my challenge. In any case, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for inviting me here, Jenny. Really appreciate it. And a special thanks to Terry Tamminen as well, your CEO.
Thank you so much. I'm sure there's many questions about this, but to keep us on time, please find Hampus after and ask questions. I bet you have questions about the marine protected areas, braid theory, and how to probably implement that as an idea. So thank you. So moving forward, to inspiring the next generation to engage in ocean STEM and look to the blue economy for good paying jobs, which happens to be the third part of our mission. Many of you here, the way we deliver our mission is through our partnerships. So we've got Brad from APC Solar, who's in the field trips, Kelp Arc, LAMI, the great LAMI, LA Maritime Institute, Braid Theory, and of course, Cabrillo Marine Aquarium. We are announcing in July with an event with the mayor, the LA Waterfront STEM Network, and LAMI and the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium and Battleship Iowa and the local LA Harbor College are the founding partners in that. But Cabrillo Marine Aquarium has been our partner since we launched out of Annenberg 12 years ago. And it's so exciting to have Diane Alps here today to talk about their new exhibits and what they're doing over there. And I'll briefly read a little bit about her, but her resume goes on and on and on, but she has worked in marine science education and marine mammal interpretation in Southern California for over 25 years. Through her longtime work with the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium, she has trained hundreds of volunteers who serve as naturalists aboard local whale watching boats, and has helped connect the public with the ocean and wildlife that's found off our coast. So please help me welcome Diane Alps.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Altasea. And Thank you to Caroline Brady, and apologies to everyone that Caroline couldn't be here today, but hopefully I will be able to share some of our exciting news. It's truly an exciting time at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium. Just over 18 months ago, we embarked on a long, very overdue endeavor to completely overhaul our life support system. This is it was built in 1981 when our existing footprint was built, our Frank Gehry designed building. And that's all of the electrical and all of the plumbing for all of our fish, all of our animals, and all of our wildlife. So this was a huge endeavor. Due to the scale and the scope of the work, the city had encouraged us to fully close, being that we would be really shutting down a major portion of our facility. But that's not really the Cabrillo way. So we, due to our commitments, not due to, but with our commitments to our programming, our community, we were just motivated to continue on and stay open, stay the course. And we did. We managed to not only maintain all of our normal programming, but we actually developed new programs. We adapted our programs to fit the lack of a main exhibit hall, which had all of our wildlife, or not all of it, but a majority of the animals in it, all of our exhibits. We expanded our programs, we developed new materials, and we continue to see just over 200,000 people each year. So I would like to take you, let's see, here we go. I'm sorry, Hampus, your contact information, if anybody wanted to get that, the next slide, but we can probably come back to that. I'd like to take you inside the renovation for a brief look at the amazing accomplishments from the last year and a half.
Hi, I'm Jim. I'm the programs director here at Cabrillo Marine Aquarium, and what started as a modest card table on the beach has blossomed into what you see today. The card table initially was just a way to interact with our guests at the beach, and it was a lifeguard who was just curious about the different animals and different organisms that people were interacting with on the beach. That passion then turned into a museum, which was a location where people could come and learn about some of the different organisms we have, but organisms all over the world as well. And it was a museum, and that museum then eventually grew into the aquarium. But not only are we here at the aquarium, but our programs extend outside of the aquarium as well. We're fortunate to be right at the beach here, and so our programs take people out to the beach. So we've grown from that card table of just a handful of different ways of interacting with people to actually having programs that lead people out into the touch tank, or out into the tide pools. And now we have volunteers who come down. We train them about marine biology and the animals. Not only do they lead tours around the aquarium, but they also put kids on boats, and we take kids whale watching. All that was started by John Olguin, that lifeguard with that focus and that idea of connecting our community with the local animals that we have here. And that has grown once again even into bigger programs like our Grunion program as well that we've been doing for over 75 years, bringing people out to the beach to see the Grunion come. Our programs have evolved to include more hands-on opportunities here at the aquarium as well, with our Exploration Center and Aquatic Nursery that brings kids down to do actual research in the nursery itself, surrounded by other people who are scientists or who are engaged in research opportunities themselves as well. So the students have a real enriching opportunity to do real research.
First and foremost, I want people to feel welcome when they come in. That's the number one goal. I want people to feel like this space is for them, and then I want them to learn. I want them to have fun. I want them to be inspired. I want them to enjoy time with family and friends, and I want them to leave knowing that they have an impact on the ocean, both positive and negative, and hopefully will have ideas on what they can do to help protect our ocean. Exhibit design shapes visitor experience in a couple different ways. You want people when they're coming in here to feel like they can read something on a wall or engage in something interactive in a way that gives them comfort and allows them to take on information.
I'd like to show you guys a little bit about our collections. Cabrillo Marine Aquarium started out as shells on a card table in Venice Beach in front of a lifeguard tower. And as that collection started to grow, they needed a place to house it. In 1935, those shells moved into the Cabrillo Beach bathhouse and a museum was born. Over the years, many specimens were added to our collection, whether people collecting new things or research projects, things were deposited here, and our collection grew and grew. And now we use our collection for teaching. If you go to some of our public spaces, you'll notice lots of specimens on display, like our Exploration Center. We have a lot of preserved specimens in jars and dried specimens, so we use our specimens for teaching. We also have a really neat way of engaging with people through our public engagement window that we didn't have before in our old space. We have a window that's open to the courtyard, and at set times we're going to have staff there working on specific projects, articulating a skeleton, cleaning a cormorant skull, prepping shark skin, things like that, and the public can watch and ask questions.
Hi, I'm Jose Bacallao. I'm the exhibits director at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium. I'm standing here in front of our new pump house, which is the life support system for our exhibit hall. The exhibit hall was fabricated in 1980 and opened to the public in 1981. The design of the old pump house and the life support system that cared for all of our animals was designed in the 70s, and that was a long time ago. So in 2020, we got together as a team and we worked with engineers and designers, and we came up with an incredible plan to create everything that's behind me. This modern system brings new technology and new methods of caring for our animals. We have filtration, we have structure, and we have accommodations for our staff, our operators, who manage the daily operations of life support care. What's happening inside this room directly impacts the health and the water quality that our animals live in every single day. We're very proud of what we achieved, and the new system brings us into a modern world where we are preventing disease, we are providing crystal clear and healthy seawater so that our animals can thrive in their exhibits.
When I got here in 1989, we decided that we wanted to show plankton to people as a live animal. And the best plankton to show was jellyfish. We started growing jellyfish in this little space, and this was actually a wall. And people would look through the door that we had to the room as it was cracked open. And even if we were just pouring water from one jar to another, they were totally intrigued. Because, as we all know, the best part of going to a museum or aquarium or a zoo is behind the scenes. And what we do here at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium is try to show as much behind the scenes as possible. Now, this is not just a place to grow jellyfish, even though we got pretty good at it. So good that we were able to share with aquariums from Alaska to Boston and from Taiwan to the Bermudas and many places in Europe. But we got some of our young volunteers involved, just like that's what we do here at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium. As they became more involved, they started asking questions. As they asked questions, we decided this was a great place for the beginning of the scientific method for these young people to apply it so they would learn more about it. Now, while we were working on that young scientist program, we were also having some of our colleagues, our professional colleagues, like Dr. John DeBeery from Caltech. John came to us because he was going to look at jellyfish and how they move and try to figure out if he could understand that from an engineering point of view and then apply it. And he did exactly that. Jellyfish have very efficient movement. That movement that he was describing was applied to things like trying to detect if someone has an early heart problem. By the way, for some of John's work, he got the MacArthur Genius Award. Another example is we had a youngster came to us from a local community college, and Lisa Gershwin was her name. And she came to us and she was so intrigued by these jellyfish, I think she spent more time in this lab than many of the staff did. And what Lisa eventually did was she went on to get in her academic career her PhD. She described over 200 species of jellyfish. She also has written very acclaimed books that are available on jellyfish and on climate change, and just an amazing person that has done so much with jellyfish. And she had her start right here in the Jelly Lab. This Jelly Lab was also the inspiration for us here at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium to apply it to a young scientist program, again with the help of the City of Los Angeles and the Friends of Cabrillo Marine Aquarium, where we had young people come here and they were learning the basics of science. And they were using it while aquaculture was going on. Kind of like growing those jellyfish. Well, we were growing many other animals, and now it's the aquatic nursery.
For 90 years, Cabrillo Marine Aquarium has proudly served our community by offering free access to explore and connect with the marine life of Southern California. We have always been rooted in science and driven by a belief that the ocean belongs to everyone. Thank you to all of our supporters. We share our pride in this unique and fascinating aquarium with you. We will remain true to our past, but our focus is forward, growing our conservation impact, advancing animal well-being, and inspiring a deeper connection to the ocean we all share. The ocean is for everyone, and we're just getting started.
So as Jenny mentioned, I'm a marine educator. I study whales. I had nothing to do with the build at all, of course. But I have to tell you, there's a couple of interesting things. One point that I thought was really impressive when we redid our life support system is that they sought for modernization, sustainability, and longevity. So instead of using galvanized steel, which is your primary normal big construction that you would have developed that with, they incorporated fiberglass reinforced plastic. So our entire life support system is all non-corrosive, all stainless steel or this FRP. It was never used by the City of Los Angeles before, and it had to be introduced. So it actually added quite a bit of time, a little bit of extra cost for us to get to the process. We had to produce case studies and prove its merit and worth. But because of that, we now have this entire non-corrosive life support system, and the city can now incorporate it and has authorized its use in any city structures. So hopefully we'll see more of that moving forward as well. So with that, I encourage you to come back and ask us some questions. I'd love to talk more about the reopening and some of the exciting things we've done. We also have some exciting whale information at our table. Or better yet, come by at 3 o'clock today, where we are going to be welcoming David Helvarg to the stage. So I'd like to bring him up now. He's going to be doing a talk at 3 p.m. at the aquarium, and I think we're going to get a little sneak peek of that now. So welcome, David.
Can you, where do we hit this?
I think this just advanced there.
Huh?
Whoops, next.
Well,
there you go.
okay.
Okay.
And hit it right there to get it rolling? Or just
I
double
think just the next one. Hit it
Okay.
again. Yep.
Anyway, again, it's great. Last time I did a book talk at the Cabrillo Aquarium for my last book, The Golden Shore, California's Love Affair with the Sea. It was the old kind of quaint, and it had a legacy feel to it. So I'm very excited to be coming to the new, updated, and modern Cabrillo Aquarium. So after lunch, if you want to come by, please do, for my new book, Forest of the Sea. I'll give you a very brief 2-minute video on what it's about. In my book, Forest of the Sea, I set out to begin a journey and tell a story of one of the largest marine habitats on Earth. A wilderness bigger than the Amazon rainforest, a cold and challenging saltwater realm that can also be an entrancing cathedral of light and life, a vibrant center of wonder and warning in our rapidly changing seas. The world's kelp forests are as mysterious as the deepest ocean trenches, even though they cover the nearshore waters of more than a quarter of our global coastline, from the Arctic to South Australia, Norway to the tip of Latin America. Hundreds of millions of people live within a shore dive's distance of kelp forest, without knowing much or anything about them. Seeing mounds of pungent, fly-covered seaweed, some of it kelp, few would imagine that these forests of the sea produce $500 billion of goods and services a year. These range from edible marine wildlife, including salmon, cod, rockfish, and herring that depend on kelp, to emulsifiers used in ice cream and cosmetics, to powerful storm and coastal protection, even much of the oxygen we breathe. It turns out that kelp forests are one of the essential sources and crucibles of life on our blue marble planet. And yet, after years of diving in wild kelp and seeing its decline, even as seaweed farming has become a growing part of our global food security, I couldn't find any media coverage on the links between kelp climate and the future of our ocean. That's why I decided to write my book, Forest of the Sea, The Remarkable Life and Imperiled Future of Kelp, that's taken me on a wild adventure from a lobster boat in Maine to an underwater shark frenzy in Micronesia, from being alongside divers smashing sea urchins in the cold, murky waters of Northern California, to visiting a sleek aluminum biorefinery turning algae into jet fuel on Turkey's Black Sea coast. So join me on a literary nonfiction adventure as we dive into the Forest of the Sea.
So, thanks. I mean, it is, and I first got into kelp when I was living in San Diego, and in this book, I spent a fair amount of time not only in Northern California, where 95% of the bull kelp is gone, but also down here with the giant kelp of Central and Southern California. Central California, they still have the predator, chapter 2 is otter things, and that predator helped reduce the damage that was done when we had the last marine heat wave called the blob. It took out a lot of, it weakened the kelp, but it also supercharged sea star wasting disease, which took out the last predator in Northern California, the sunflower sea star. Imagine a starfish, but it can grow to be like the size of a bald eagle, 13 pounds with 24 arms, and it's carnivorous. You can actually see it move. It's fast moving. It was the terror of sea urchins, and then sea star wasting disease wiped out over 90% of all the sea stars on the West Coast during this last heat wave. And in Northern California, there are no other predators left. And so the little purple urchins that were hiding in the bottom structure came out, multiplied 10,000%, took down the beautiful bull kelp forest and replaced them with urchin barrens, which is happening around the world, where turf algae and urchin barrens are displacing kelp forest. Here in Southern California with the giant kelp, it's different. I've been out here in LA with, and tomorrow I'll actually be speaking with the, tomorrow evening at the Patagonia store up in Santa Monica with Tom Ford and the Bay Foundation. Over the last decade, they've restored 80 acres of kelp forest off of Palos Verdes. And, they had to, it took 10 years and a lot of money, and they killed a lot of urchins, but the spores came back on their own. And then, of course, also in chapter 3, blob, zombies, and algae labs, I came here to Altasea. And, just walking around here, it's amazing, going down the dockage here, and you see the barges, the competing universities figuring different ways to pull carbon dioxide out of seawater. And one wants to turn it to calcium carbonate for construction materials. The other universities thinking hydrogen fuel. And then you pass the model mechanical wave power machines that were developed here and now on ports, shore-based wave power on seawalls of ports from LA to Holland, and then eventually made it into the to the kelp arc, which you should go by their table after this. It's fascinating. Basically, it's sort of a seed bank, except it's actually a spore bank of various kelp species, identifying the genes and also creating a source for the genetic material for restoration where possible and for future existence where the threats are existential in many parts of the world. So on the other hand, kelp and coral, one chapter I'll talk about at the aquarium, how, people at least know coral's in trouble. People don't understand that the kelp forests of the world not only generate $500 billion, they're 2.8 million, even after the loss of half of them. They're 2.8 million square miles, larger than the Amazon rainforest. And this is the world's other forest disaster. I wrote that for the LA Times recently, just looking at something that is so beautiful, so valuable. It's in your life every day. The alginate in kelp is processed in processed food and cosmetics and pharmaceuticals. Almost everything you do every day connects you to kelp, and yet most of us know so little about it. So that's why I wrote this book, and that's why I hope you'll join me after lunch at the aquarium so we can talk in depth about it. And meanwhile, go visit the kelp ark over there. Thank you.
Yes, if you can, I make the effort and go hear David speak. He is an icon, and the aquarium has the ability to sell books, so buy the book, and I always give books as gifts, and so please have a quick lunch at one of the great restaurants in San Pedro and go to the aquarium. I would like to thank David and Diane and Hampus for being here and for speaking. And I want to thank all of you for being here on such a popular weekend, and all of our partners that are at tables. Please, as I said at the beginning, if you would like to join the Altasea journey, please talk to me or someone in a t-shirt about volunteering. Our annual fundraiser, which is going to be 10 celebrity chefs cooking, is on October 10th. So I hope you put that on your calendar, and visit and buy something with Altasea on it to wear our brand. But again, thank you for being here. I should have mentioned at the beginning that Terry is traveling. He is on his way to Singapore to represent Altasea at a summit there. So while the cat's away, I get to take the microphone again. So also thank you for being here for me. Have a good weekend.